Hello, I'm Paola Ranova, and today we're going to talk about 4 signs that show the inner child may be subconsciously ruling a person's life. So these 4 signs are actually 4 patterns that I've observed in my trajectory professionally and also in my own soul healing process. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, that you comment, that you share it, and that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep growing our beautiful Cardinal Method community. So when we talk about the inner child, in the Cardinal Method perspective, the Cardinal Method is the system I developed for soul healing, consciousness expansion, and the joy of life. In the Cardinal Method, we talk about 4 levels of consciousness. So there's the deep unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the superconscious mind. The inner child is connected to the subconscious mind, the second level of consciousness. So subconscious patterns are not deliberate patterns, right? They're autopilot and they're not about a conscious choice that you make in your present moment. So when you detect specific patterns, you can start changing your life for better. And the Cardinal Method is all about knowing yourself so that you can transform your blind spots and dissolve your obstacles and lead a much more fulfilling life. So the inner child may be sabotaging the happiness and the fulfillment of a person's adult life. And if you think about the adult life in a nutshell, it really is about creating your own resources, having enough strength to create your own resources for survival, for fulfillment, and engaging in healthy relationships and healthy exchanges of energy, right? When we cannot really do that, subconsciously, the inner child may be in action. And the wounded inner child is what I'm talking about. We have a healthy inner child or a wounded inner child, and we can heal any soul wound with the proper guidance, with the proper training, and especially with the desire to change within, right? To shift our inner worlds. So when we talk about patterns, the 4 signs that the inner child may be ruling a person's life, we're actually talking about these patterns that I'm going to dive into now. So the first one is the taker pattern. So the person expects the world to take care of him or her, and they get really angry if other people do not serve them, if other people don't provide for them. So yes, the child needs to be cared for, but the adult is the one who creates his or her own resources, right? If an adult human being is a taker, cannot engage in healthy exchanges because they expect to take it all and never give anything in return, that's one of the patterns of inner child mode, wounded inner child mode. So they tend to abuse other people's time, they feel very entitled, and they end up feeling like a victim whenever they don't get their own way. So this is important to say. If you know someone like that, it's important not to judge that person, to just detect that pattern and observe, and of course, create your own healthy boundaries. But also know that most people that create turmoil in the world, they're not necessarily doing this because they're cruel, because they're mean. It's usually because they do not have enough soul education and they are mostly clueless. It's not about cruelty, it's about cluelessness, if that makes sense. So observe that. And if you know someone like that, red flags, right? Just observe without judgment and know how to set healthy boundaries. The second sign or the second pattern is usually what I mostly deal with people that reach out to me with the Cardinal Method, which are the givers, people who feel that they cannot receive. They have a hard time receiving. They have a hard time with self-permission to be happy. They give and give and give, and they do not receive enough. So they end up feeling very drained. They tend to attract the takers because you can only engage in an imbalanced relationship if you are a giver with a taker, right? People who take it all and people who give it all. So these people, the second pattern people, they end up feeling like martyrs in the long run. It's always about self-sacrificing. and it just is not healthy, right? So there's a huge blind spot in the second pattern because you always feel people are taking advantage of you. But if you feel like maybe you resonate with the second pattern, it's important that you learn how to set your boundaries and feel safe and secure by saying no whenever people are trying to take advantage of you, right? So that's the second pattern. The third pattern is the paralyzed pattern. That's also an inner child wound, because these people live in scarcity. They don't even engage in exchanges. I'm not talking about healthy or unhealthy give and take. I'm talking about no exchanges, very few relationships. They tend to live in isolation. They live in scarcity because they don't create their own resources. They don't engage in any kind of exchange, as I said, and they live with very little, and they never manifest their full potential. So the potential stays as a potential, unfulfilled, right? They just do not create a beautiful life in the physical world because they're paralyzed. So that's pattern number 3. And the fourth one, and this is pretty interesting, is the prove you wrong pattern. So that kind of wounded inner child is very stubborn, and they're usually fighting against someone, an authority figure, someone who is powerful in their lives. And they make themselves powerless, or they just do the exact opposite of what was advised to them just to prove someone powerful wrong. So let me tell you something, and this goes for many other things, not just the fourth pattern. If you set your mind to something, that will happen. So if you receive advice and you set your mind to the belief that this is not going to work, it will not work. Nothing in the external world is more powerful than your mind. Regarding your own life, your mind is the sovereign. So if someone's trying to help you and you set your mind to the subconsciously, of course, right, to the fact that this is going to go wrong, it will go wrong, regardless of the beautiful potentials that may be out there for you. So setting your mind for things to go wrong, just to go against an authority figure, that could be a parent, that could be a counselor, that could be a coach, that could be a boss, whoever, right? It's this deep subconscious conditioning that says, it's kind of rebellious, that you can show someone powerful or important to you that they're wrong, either because of their giving advice or they're trying to help you. It's just a stubborn prove you wrong pattern, right? So these 4 patterns of wounded inner child approaches to life may be sabotaging the happiness of your adult life. So I hope that this was useful for you, that it gives you food for thought. And if you want to dive deeper into more contents like this for knowing thyself, for self-knowledge and self-transformation, just subscribe to our newsletter. We have a website, paolaranova.com. The link is here below this video. And if you give us your email and subscribe to our newsletter, every week we have new content for you. We're always communicating with our Cardinal Method community. There's so much more in our Cardinal Method space that you can dive into. So it's wonderful to have you here on YouTube. And if you want to get a deeper dive, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It's going to be amazing to have you with us. So thank you so much for your presence here, and I will see you soon.